Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this kind of special edition of our Lumix Live platform. My name is Sean Robinson, and I'm the host of Lumix Live, as well as one of the sales reps for the Panasonic Lumix brand. Now, throughout the month of November, we're broadcasting here on the Photoplus platform, as well as broadcasting on our normal YouTube channel as well. So we're welcoming a number of people from both our traditional YouTube platform and everyone that has graciously joined us in the Photoplus platform. Now, if this is one of the first sessions you've ever joined up with for Panasonic, welcome. We host these events once a week traditionally again on the YouTube platform, where we basically act as a connection point for you, the community, to actually be able to get answers and have conversations with those of us that work for Panasonic Lumix, that are photographers and videographers in the industry, and in some cases actually work with a lot of, in some cases actually also working with a lot of our engineers and other team members with the company. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining. If you are watching over on YouTube, make sure to head over to the Photoplus platform, get yourself registered, and check out everything that's going on over there. It's a really exciting event this year because it's mobile. We're virtual. We get to be able to access different speakers and different events, check out all the cool stuff going on. So definitely make sure to head over there. Jack has dropped the link in the YouTube channel. Again, just make sure you register over there. If you are on the YouTube channel, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that kind of fun stuff that we cover every single week, so that you get notifications when we're doing more of these events. But really, kind of just want to jump right into it with, kind of what the topic is for this session. We're kind of going to be covering a whole bunch of different topics about, what we're going to be doing for the month, give you guys a peek into the different sessions that we have coming up, but then also really just using this time to have a conversation with those of you on both platforms with what kinds of questions you guys have. We're also going to be covering over the entire current L-mount system from Panasonic Lumix, so I've got a little bit of a demonstration I can give over there. But in the meantime, if you have questions, and this is to both of the communities here, if you have questions, make sure to drop them in the chat sections on your platform. If you're in YouTube, the normal rules apply. Make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras so that we can see them. If you're over on the Photoplus platform, make sure to just drop your chat in there. We have a couple of our team members in there answering questions and getting you guys information. So I kind of wanted to start this week's kind of session, obviously focusing on Photoplus and what we're planning on doing for the rest of this month. For those that are here, obviously every Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, or 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be going live with different speakers from the company to talk about a number of different topics. And I wanted to actually throw up the pre-roll here because we've got a number of really cool activities coming up. So for those that are available on Friday, 11/6 from 2 to 3 p.m., make sure to also tune in here for this. We've got a really cool event going on with the L-mount system, so kind of an expanded conversation there. Next week, we have Brandon Cortez is going to be joining us on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. to be talking actually about portrait photography. And not just, obviously, we are Panasonic. We are Panasonic Lumix. We're going to be talking about the Lumix cameras across the board, but also really diving into a lot of the process behind it, how to get yourself into it, what recommendations for lights would be really good, what recommendations obviously in the Lumix camera lineup is going to make best sense for you, and also covering some of the lenses out there. The L-mount system has grown dramatically over the last year and a half that we've been out doing this, and there's a lot of exciting options out there for photographers that are both traditional portrait photographers, wedding photographers, really any kind of area that you're in, there's a lens available in the system for it. The following week, on the 17th, we're going to have Michael Richardson joining us, who is also monitoring the chat on Photoplus, to be talking about sports photography with, obviously, again, with Lumix cameras. But giving you some of his background and checking out some of his images. And throughout this whole thing, obviously, we are going to be checking out images and giving you guys some tips. So if you have questions about certain topics, this is an incredibly interactive platform. So always feel free to shout out, jump in with your questions. We will always have someone monitoring, and I'll always be able to stop and answer whatever kind of questions we see here. And then we're going to round out the month with Jack Salamanchek is going to be joining us to discuss a lot of things about macro photography. We're going to touch on some light painting and some live composite with some of the features that we have in cameras like the G95 or the S5, the brand new full frame camera. And really just kind of round the whole session out with just, again, a lot of conversations. So for today, like I said, we're going to kind of keep this a little more, what kind of things do you guys want to hear about while I go through some of the topics with the cameras, and take it from there. So again, if you're on the YouTube channel, make sure to tag at Lumix Cameras so we can see your questions. I am monitoring them over here. If you're in Photoplus, make sure to tag your questions in Photoplus, and we will get to them. So let's start with a kind of status of the system right now. So over here, you can see I have my current kit for the Panasonic S-Series line of cameras. So this would be our S1, our S1H, our S1R, and then now the brand new Lumix S5. This is basically rounding out what we've, started out from the beginning with these cameras. The S1, S1R, S1H were designed as the pro high-level tier products that were going to be, basically bulletproof is the way I categorize them. You can take these things anywhere, you can put them in pretty much any environment you can think of, and they're just going to perform. They're going to do what you need them to do. You're not going to be worrying about any kind of challenges because of an environmental impact. You're not going to be worrying about, is the camera going to shut off on me or anything like that. And we started that whole thing out with a number of Pro Series lenses that came out with it as well. So we had the 70-200 millimeter f4. We had our 24-105, if I can do this while kind of showing here. So we had the 24-105 f4, the 70-200 f4 as well. And then one of my favorite lenses, the 50 millimeter f1.4 S Pro. These are, kind of cream of the crop lenses. This is the stuff that when you're out and you're a pro, you need your lenses to be pro. You need them to work. You need them to be sharp, accurate, everything that you'd expect. And basically, as the system has kind of grown over the time, we've started to get into the kind of wheelhouse where we can start expanding out. We can start bringing things down from, say, the upper tier of cost where, it might not be feasible to pick it up at the moment, but, they're kind of that aspirational lens where you're trying to get into eventually. So with just before the launch of the S5, we released this little guy here, the 20 to 60 millimeter compact travel lens. So this lens is basically been one of our, kind of core throw out the rule book that you would have normally expected for what a kind of kit focal length would be, and you're getting something that becomes that ultra wide angle lens, pretty good solid telephoto-ish lens focal lengths on there, and it just ends up being that perfect lens to really sit on your platform. As a landscape night photographer myself, the wider I can get, as I smack my mic, the wider I can get the lens, the better I like it. And obviously, in some cases, the faster the lens can be, that's always a nice positive benefit there. And actually, one thing to note, the only lens I don't have on my table right here is my 16 to 35 f4, which I've actually lent out to a friend of mine so they could go out and actually experience some of the lens. So the system's grown. Depending on what kind of platform and what style of photographer you want to get in, you are. With that 20 to 60 millimeter, we've also actually right before that, we did also release the upgraded version of the 70 to 200. So we have our 70 to 200 2.8, and we have our 24 to 70 millimeter 2.8 as well. So I would argue that it's basically one of the, kind of fastest growing native systems out there if you look at how quick we've put out Pro Series lenses. And a lot of people I know in the chat over on YouTube and some of the other platforms that we're monitoring as well have always been constantly asking, well, what's next? Where does Panasonic go from here? What kind of lenses, do we jump out with next? And there's so many different platforms. When we launched the S5, we also released some information about additional lenses that are coming out that will be available soonish for more users. Things that may be sitting more comfortably on something like an S5 versus the larger platforms of the S1, S1R, and S1H. That would be an 85 millimeter 1.8. We did I think it was a 35, 50. We announced the 70-300 under development. So there's a ton of lenses that are under development and should be coming out relatively soon. So you're definitely going to want to keep an eye out and make sure you're paying attention to the platforms that we're on for when that kind of information is available for everybody. For those in Facebook, Facebook on YouTube, I don't have pricing. I don't have availability on anything like that. So unfortunately, I don't have info to give you guys on that area. But why did we end up, kind of jumping in with this, and what is the kind of goal with it? I know a lot of you that are joining us have probably joined Panasonic because of our Micro Four Thirds platform. You guys have seen our system grow over the years, the GH series, the G series, even for those years ago that joined us with the GM series. There's so many different options available in that system. Why did we jump up to full frame? And when you look at the general market and the general use cases out in the industry, you see areas where Micro Four Thirds can be a really good product because you're going to have the benefits of much longer lenses because the system can be smaller and you're working with that 2 times multiplication for your depth or your field of view. But then there are situations where, you really want to be able to shoot in ultra low light. You want to be able to really have to crank your ISO up in certain cases, and you want that aesthetic to an image. So back when I was working in Newark and worked actually with our team on some of these cameras, we really took that into consideration with these, creating something that a professional could pick up, go out into the field with, and create amazing content with, because in the end, it doesn't really matter what camera you're using. It has to be something that you're comfortable with, and it has to be able to withstand your environment of shooting. So over the last year and a half, obviously, we've been putting a lot of effort onto the full frame system, and as actually a couple people are commenting on in the YouTube chat about, well, what about the future of Micro Four Thirds? Well, if you've been watching and paying attention to the Panasonic series and what we've offered recently, you'll see that for those that want to get into photography, so someone who's wanting to step up from something like a mobile phone and actually be able to take really good pictures with a camera instead of something that's just attached to your phone, we've got the brand new Lumix G100, which becomes like one of the most fun cameras I've used in a really long time. Micro Four Thirds camera, it's based on a 20 megapixel sensor. It's designed to be small, compact, travel friendly, but still accept the entire Micro Four Thirds lens lineup that's available there. But we didn't stop there. Last month, we did also release the brand new Lumix BGH1 box camera. Now, obviously, those who may be diehard photographers, this one probably went under the radar for some of you. Which is perfectly cool. It's not necessarily a camera designed for photographers. It is really more of a production style camera, production video cinematic style camera. And in fact, it's what I am using to actually broadcast all of these Lumix Live platforms. So we've got a number of things that have kind of advanced over time. Micro Four Thirds still becomes a very, very core part of our business. Those of you that have grown up and kind of grown through this industry with Micro Four Thirds, it is one of those systems that is going to be here for a very long time. And actually, let's see here. One of the questions from James actually was, will you continue to support Micro Four Thirds, and do you have further software updates on the G9? It's what I love about the Lumix in terms of software updates. So as far as like updates go, James, I don't have information about firmware updates, things like that, but we are 100% dedicated to the Micro Four Thirds platform. Like I had just been saying, yes, we put a lot of effort into the S series over the last year and a half. Yes, we know a lot of users out there that aren't interested in full frame. We know you guys want more cameras and lenses in Micro Four Thirds. That's kind of the cool thing about where the system was. It allowed us to actually kind of, shift focus a bit. The lens assortment out there between things like the 10 to 25, the GH series as a core platform, the couple of telephoto lenses that we've come out with, the 200 millimeter prime, the 50 to 200 2.8 to f4, all of those lenses set up a pretty solid base for us to say, okay, look, let's now look at what actually really is needed in the industry and what we can do to grow the brand and build out better for photographers, videographers out there in the industry. Because let's face it, photography, I love photography. I've grown up, I'm tattooed with lenses and cameras and all that kind of stuff. I have always been diehard a photographer. But as things have grown, as we've spent the last, around 8 months, we've had to adapt ourselves. We've had to adapt to find new ways to reach customers, to reach viewers, to reach our friends and families. And 90% of that's being done over video. So learning how to adapt over time and find ways that you can take the existing equipment you have, or even take new equipment that is coming out into the market and adapt it into your style, or realistically adapt your style into how some of these things work, really helps grow this entire industry. It helps all of us as business owners, as casual, photographers, videographers, where we do this for fun. It helps build everything out. So, see here. Sorry, I was just jumping through questions. I'm going to address a couple more questions in a second here. But again, if you guys have questions about Panasonic, about Lumix, about the products that we sell, make sure to be dropping them in there. We have this entire time is devoted to all of us, to all of you in the community. Like I said, it's a very one-on-one platform here, the way we're running this. And actually, that's a good segue. So during the entire month of November, as those that are on the Photoplus platform, and those of you joining us in YouTube, this is actually one of the core reasons why you want to get over onto the Photoplus platform. Get yourself registered. It's free. Get yourself registered so that you can come into this platform here. The entire team at Panasonic Lumix, myself, Michael Richardson, Brandon Cortez, and Jack Salamanchuk, are all available for one-on-one consultations where you can schedule time with us and actually get our undivided attention to talk about your questions, to go over your cameras, your lenses, what you guys want to have answered. There's also a constant open live chat on the Photoplus platform, so you're able to submit your question, and within a reasonable amount of time, one of us is going to be answering and having that conversation with you. So aside from just the weekly events that we've got going on, those are things that are open up the entire time over on the Photoplus platform. So again, those of you guys in the YouTube channel, you know that I'm here every single, well, at least for November, I'll be here every Tuesday. But we also have a more in-depth platform over on Photoplus. So let's actually jump over and grab a couple more of the questions over from the YouTube chat here. Albert is asking, is there a macro lens for the S series? That is actually a really good question. There are macro lenses for the S series. This is probably one of the coolest advantages of looking at the L-mount alliance as a whole. This system isn't just Panasonic. This system is designed and developed by 3 different companies, by Leica, Sigma, and Panasonic. Now, all 3 individual companies we're all our own individual companies. We all make our own products. However, the benefit that you as a user will see is that there may be lenses that we haven't gotten around to making yet. In this case, macro lenses. We don't have a macro lens under the Lumix branding here. It's not one that we make currently. But Sigma has two macro lenses to my knowledge. They have a 70 millimeter L-mount macro lens, and then I believe it is a 105 millimeter is the new one that they had just released. So you have two solid macro lenses available in a kind of consumer-friendly price point. There are also all of the entire L-mount lenses that are available from Leica as well. So when you look at the platform, and I know a lot of people that are, kind of trying to figure out what you want to do camera-wise. The L-mount system has probably, I would argue, probably one of the top lens assortments available currently. Whether you're looking at what would be considered first-party or second-party lenses, pretty much anything that's designed for L-mount I would consider it a first-party lens. It is designed by the mount, for the mount, so that you have access for all of this stuff. So yeah, Albert, definitely check out the two macro lenses from Sigma. I know that they're solid lenses, actually, and I realized as Jack had actually answered there. And as Jack also pointed out, if you don't need a true macro lens, you want something that's kind of macro-ish, you've got the 24-105, which has an incredibly solid close focusing distance. I believe it is a 1:2, and the 20-60 millimeter, which is a 50% macro. So you've got good options to get yourself into it, and then being able to figure out if you want to, kind of divert out and, jump into dedicated macro or some other options like that. Let's see if we've got another question here. Question from, let's see here. Sorry, as we're jumping through here. Okay, that's actually just a comment, not a question. About loving the G9, especially when paired with the Leica collaboration lenses, and borrowing an S5 next week and looking forward to try it out. Yes, James, it is a solid camera, the one I've got right here. This has been my go-to camera for the longest time. And actually, that brings up a good point, because if we look at, again, my assortment of cameras over here that you see. So I've got my S5 here. One of the coolest things, to kind of piggyback off what Albert was asking, the entire Lumix S-Series lineup, like I said, is cross-compatible with lenses from Leica and Sigma that are all designed on the L-mount system. So what that means is I can jump from using my 20-60 millimeter, my 24-105, or even my 50 millimeter. I can jump from using all of these and throw on my Sigma 45 millimeter 2.8 lens that I have here attached to it. This lens has been one of the most fun lenses I've used for this system, because if you look at it, it's small, it's compact, it keeps the entire kit nice and travel friendly, and I get roughly that 50 millimeter field of view for street photography, casual landscape-ish kind of things. Now, granted, I know 45 millimeter is a little tight for landscape, but it's a solid kit to travel with. And then as I was talking about before, I also love doing landscape and astrophotography, and that's where I actually pick up my 24 millimeter 1.4 L-mount lens from Sigma as well, and I will throw that consistently on my S1R to be doing some, night landscape work, some, day landscape work. I'll even throw it on my S5 when I want to use the programs like Live Composite that we offer in the camera. And you're getting solid performance with any of these lenses that you're putting on there. Now, when you look at some of the lenses that are out there for the L-mount system, a couple things to just look for. There are lenses that are converted lenses into the L-mount system, and you just have to remember that those are lenses that were designed for traditional DSLR-style focusing systems that are being converted over into the way mirrorless cameras focus, which across the board, mirrorless cameras focus typically a lot faster than traditional cameras or traditional lenses were designed for. So there may be a little bit of a difference there, but you just want to look for the current mirrorless design lenses, and there are a ton of them out there for the L-mount system. Let's see, one of the other questions that I saw here, actually really quick. FC252 over on YouTube is asking if there's a speed booster to go from L mount to micro four thirds. Unfortunately, no. The flange distance between micro four thirds and L mount is not identical, but it's very, very close. I don't know if it's possible to build an adapter to do that. I will never say never, but at the moment, even if there was an adapter, there would be no space to do a speed booster style adapter for it, is my understanding. All right, we got a question over on the Photoplus platform from Alan. Can you talk about how dual native ISO works for stills photography on the S5? I would be happy to, Alan. So, for those that haven't ever heard of what dual native ISO is, it is a technology that we deploy in a number of our cameras now, where traditionally cameras have a single native point, which would be the ISO that you want to put your camera at to get the best dynamic range. For stills photography, that was traditionally the lowest number you can choose before you go into an extended ISO range. When you work with video in cameras, those numbers are typically higher than what the lowest number is that the ISO values show you on the camera. In case of, say, the S1H, which is the easiest one that I can remember off the top of my head, you've got 640 and 4000 are the two native ISOs. What that means is that if you put the ISO at one of those two values while you're shooting vlog, you're going to get the maximum dynamic range possible with the lowest levels of noise. Now, for video, that's great. It means you can shoot in ultra low light and still be maintaining your dynamic range and the quality of the video that you expect. But in photography, it's a little different. With photography, you still do have dual native ISOs when it comes to shooting stills. The numbers are just different. Because of the way the circuitry works and because of the way the image pipeline is working, those numbers are going to be different. So typically, if you're going to be shooting in any kind of low light or really, really dim light situations, I am usually setting my camera at around 640 ISO in the high range. And I know the first thing that I'm going to get a comment at is, well, that doesn't sound like a high ISO at all. And the reason for that is, depends on your shooting style. I like to shoot at 640 ISO and expose for all of my highlights. So I will shoot so that the brightest point in my image is properly exposed. And then I'm someone who likes to work in Photoshop and Lightroom, and then I will work with my image afterwards. Now, that's if I have a lot of time to actually work on an image. If I don't, then you can just keep upping your ISO. Comfortably, myself and Mark Toll, one of the other members of Panasonic that's monitoring questions and all that stuff with us, we shoot consistently up around 4000 ISO on the S5 and the S1 and the S1R and the S1H for that matter. All dual native ISO does for photography just really means that your higher ISO values that you put into the camera are going to be cleaner than a camera that doesn't have that circuitry or uses a different variant of what would be considered a dual gain circuit. Truthfully, it depends. Like I said again, it depends on your shooting style, Alan. If you are someone who likes to work in Photoshop, I would take a couple test shots, put the camera at 640 ISO, shoot so that your highlights look properly exposed. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people that kind of rail against that kind of advice. But if you're doing it not necessarily for quick turnaround, you'll see that there's so much latitude in the images. The image is going to look dark when you shoot this way. But the way circuitry works and the way raw editing software works, you can pull that gain up or that ISO up in post. And you'll get pretty much the same looking image as if you just set it on the camera at a higher ISO. But I actually think it looks better because I can protect my highlights better. Otherwise, just shoot the ISO up. Like I said, on the S5, 4000 ISO is actually a joy to use, especially for freezing motion in broad daylight. Let's see here. We've got another question. Yannick, what do you think of the Sigma 20 to 70 millimeter for the G9, and which lens adapter would you recommend? Looking for a cheap option for the 18 to 35. So I've never used a 20 to 70 Sigma. I am not sure, so I can't comment on that. I know that there are adapters for Micro Four Thirds that will let you put other lenses on there. Yeah, sorry. Didn't want to make you think that I'm just ignoring questions, that kind of thing. So the next question was from Red. Was asking a technical question about sharpening parameter for 4K video on S1, S1H. Is sharpening processing happening on the 6K image from the sensor or after oversampling to 4K? I don't know the exact details of the sharpening parameters. All I know is that when you're shooting in 4K, it is just downscaling from the 6K image, so the 6K width down into 4K. Or if you're on the S1H, you can actually just shoot that 6K full open gate image and have it send out there. That's probably not answering the question exactly as what you're looking for, Red. I apologize, but if you make sure to keep checking with that. I'll see if I can get you an answer for that. Let's see. The other question from FC is for dual native ISO of 640-4000. What if I shoot at, say, 2000 ISO? Will it cause more noise than, say, 4000? Yes, it will, actually. So the way dual native ISO circuits work when it comes to video, and this is an analogy that this is kind of the advice I give for a lot of people when you're looking at a camera that actually lets you select those different ranges. If you are shooting video, because this is really where this one kind of leans into. If you're shooting video and you're doing 640 or 4000 ISO for your native ranges, you want to look at where your metered ISO is putting you at. If your camera says, if you say throw it in auto ISO, right? And you're metering the scene that you want to photograph or you want to film, and it's coming up to around something like 2500 ISO or 3000 ISO, if you just put the camera to that, say you're in the auto ISO range, you're going to run into two things. One, it's going to look noisier, because the way the auto circuit works is it's gaining up from 640 all the way up to around 4000. Then when it hits 4000, it changes over into the high circuit. So that means that 2000, 2500, 3200 ISO is a pushed ISO from 640. So as we all know, or hopefully as we all know, and if you don't know, hopefully this is something you take away from this. As you are raising ISO, all you're doing is you're putting positive exposure from that base number. So 640's here, you add 1 stop, 2 stops, 3 stops, and you just keep doing that with your ISO values. Camera's always recording here. It's just gaining up the signal. What that means is 2500 is gained up, and it just has more noise into that file. The way you get around this with an S1H, because you can select what gain circuit you're on, what native ISO circuit you're on, is to actually put it into 4000, so which means setting the high ISO range, then going into your exposure and dialing it down to 2000, 2500, 3200. What you gain there is a much cleaner looking image at those ISOs, but there is a trade-off. When you pull ISO down, and this is the same for photographers as well, if you're pulling ISO down from where your native ranges are, so those would be any of the extended ISOs, when you pull it down, you lose highlight dynamic range. So it starts compressing your dynamic range a bit. Now, it's all going to depend on your shooting, like your situation. If you're looking and you can give up some dynamic range for a cleaner looking file, do it this way. If you want to try to balance out and the noise structure that you see in an image or in a video file is good, which is one of the things that the S series actually has really, really positively going for it. High ISO noise structure looks, and this is such an overused term, but it looks filmic because it is truly more randomized than what you would traditionally see in digital cameras. But more importantly, it holds detail the higher ISO you go. So you're getting detailed high ISO images that also have fairly accurate color. So you're not just mushing everything out just to be able to say you can hit 1,000,000 ISO. So there's a lot of flexibility you have in your style of shooting. Best thing to do, try it both ways. See which one fits better for your style, your editing style, your workflow, and then go with that one. It's going to really show you some of the positive benefits there for it. Let's see here. We got another question. I assume it's a question. It's a statement from Albert saying wants to see a telephoto lens on the S5. Yeah, sure. So again, if you guys are joining us on both Facebook, or I keep saying Facebook, on YouTube or on the Photoplus platform, make sure to drop a question that you have on any topic. This is an open topic this session. So if you have questions about anything, Micro Four Thirds, full frame, camcorders, whatever you want, drop the questions in and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So I'm going to throw my 70-200 2.8 on my S5 here. And we're going to show Albert what it looks like here. So there you go, Albert. That's the 70-200 2.8. Make sure I'm not covering my mic. It's the 70-200 2.8 on my S5. I actually think it's a really well-balanced kit. I'm also running on my S5. I have the small rig half cage on my S5 as well, which gives me a little bit more grip on here, but it's also got an Arca Swiss style bottom plate on here, as well as an L bracket here that still actually allows me to get my screen out so I can actually still shoot with it. So, yeah, solid combination, and fully stabilized with in-body stabilization as well as the lens stabilization. So you're getting like the best system you can for telephoto shooting, because if you're someone who is getting into, like, say, wildlife or sports photography, to kind of actually push what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks, we do also have, I'll jump over to this camera, we do also have 2 teleconverters in the S series, and it would help if you could see my face. We do have two S series teleconverters available. We have a 1.4 and a 2x teleconverter, so you have long reach with a lot of this stuff. Whether you're using the F4 or the 2.8, you have that flexibility. You have incredibly high quality teleconverters available for them. And yeah, the system is just designed to work the way you'd expect it to work. Let's see here. We have a question from, I can't read the name because it's too small on my screen. It says, it has a lot of Canon glass. Is it easy to adapt to the S1? Actually, yes, it is. It is incredibly easy to adapt EF mount lenses over to the L-mount system. In fact, with the entire L-mount system, that's actually one of the benefits that comes with having Sigma as a member of the L-mount Alliance. Sigma makes the MC21, which actually, this camera, the one that I'm filming off to the side that you guys can't see, is actually my S1R with the MC21 attached onto it and a Sigma 14-24 2.8, which happens to be an EF mount lens, just attached on there because I needed something ultra wide, and like I said earlier, my 16-35 is lent out, so unfortunately I don't have it. Otherwise I would have had that lens on there and I could take it off and show you. But yeah, so there's a super simple adapter. The MC21 lets you put any EF series lens on there. I have also put a number of EF-S series lenses on here, and it should work really well as for you as well. Let's see here. FC25 is asking, with that L bracket, can you still replace the battery? Yes, you can. So this has a cutout perfectly for me to still be able to access my battery. Which actually, for those that are looking at the S5, if you're coming from a GH series camera, the cool thing is the battery for the S5 is backwards compatible to the GH series batteries. So if you're someone using G9, GH5, GH5S, even a GH3. Although I haven't tested it in the GH3 because I don't have my GH3 anymore. It's the same. It'll work with those, even though there's a slight physical difference in them. They're just not forward compatible, so you can't put BLF 19s in here. Sorry. Let's see here. Another question from Alan this time. Lumix cameras, for Lumix cameras, do Sigma lenses L-mount support DFD focus technology? Some say Sigma doesn't focus as well as native Panasonic lenses. I don't know enough to be able to tell you definitively if the cameras do have the DFD information. All I do, 100%, what I do know is that the system is designed to be interoperable with the different lenses and cameras out there. What I will say is, so like you'll see, I use this 45mm all the time. I cannot tell a difference in the focusing speed on the S5 between this and like my 24-70. Whether it's the lens itself, this is one of the newer L-mount lenses that's designed specifically after the mount had been created and set up. So if that has something to do with it, it's possible. My 24mm 1.4 from Sigma is one of the converted versions. So it is on Sigma's end. It is sold as an L-mount lens, so it is already pre-converted. And my understanding is that there may be some special sauce in there for specifically the L-mount. With the S5, I think it performs solid, specifically for like a lot of the landscape stuff that I do. I've never had a problem with it. Now, to be totally transparent, I also don't do tracking focus. I'm not someone who's putting back button focus on and letting the camera consistently focus for my shot. It's just not how I was taught photography. It's not how I'm comfortable shooting, so it's going to vary depending on your style. I don't think anyone should be concerned necessarily with that sounds kind of elitist. Not what I meant. I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal for anybody that's practically using the lenses. If you have the ability to get into your local store, check them out, obviously in a safe manner. Check them out, put them on the camera if they have L-mount lenses there, and see for yourself. The firmware update that we're bringing, because the S5 has a more advanced focusing system than the S1, S1R, and S1H. We did announce that this focus update is coming to the other cameras. Again, not sure exactly when, but we did say by the end of the year. I can tell you that when I use this particular 24mm 1.4 on my S5, it is focusing faster than it did on the S1. So those of you that are S1 users, S1R, S1H users, and you have L-mount lenses, once the firmware comes out, definitely take another look and check it out again. Let's see here. Another question here. What's up with the BLK22 S5 batteries? You had the S5 since launch. Can't get my hands on any. Yeah, that's one of the things that happens when the camera becomes such an overwhelming demand with the dealer channels. Batteries are on their way. Definitely check your local stores. If you are, this question's coming over from YouTube. Get onto the Photoplus platform. Like I said, it's free. Just register. You can open up chats with the booth, which would be myself, Michael, Brandon, Jack, or even Mark. Make sure to drop a question in there. We can try to see if there are any local places in your area. Now, granted, we're only responsible for the U.S. Market. If you are out in another region, you'd have to check with your local region on it. But batteries are on their way. Let's see, what do we got? Another question. Matthew, was the BGH1 designed to be a Netflix camera? Design-wise, no idea. Would I love to see that happen? That would be amazing. But that is totally up to their testing, their whole direction of what they're looking for in cameras. Let's see here. What are the questions we have? Will AFC on the MC21 be possible in a future update like the MC11? That would be a question that you'd have to ask Sigma. It is their product. We don't have information about anything that they're doing or Leica or vice versa. So walking on the street, definitely check with Sigma on that one. Let's see here. Any word on the potential S1 firmware? Nothing yet. Keep your ear to the ground. You guys will know. Basically, just keep following all of our platforms. You guys will find out as we have more information. So, yeah, just keep your ear to the ground there. Let's see here. Les was commenting, I can personally vouch for the 70-200 F4 being almost perfectly balanced on the S5. It's an unbelievable combo. Yeah, the 70-200 F4, I think, is one of the more, kind of well-suited lenses for the S5. It's that smaller, compact platform. It's still F4, which honestly, these days, F4, and again, I'm probably going to get a bunch of heat from some users out there that F4 is kind of like the new 2.8. In the sense that F4 lenses are becoming so incredibly well made, especially our F4 lenses, the 24-105 and the 70-200 F4. They are phenomenally performing lenses. And the fact that you've got cameras like the S5, the S1, the S1H that you can shoot at ridiculously high ISOs and still have incredibly clean both footage and still images out of means that, getting something like 2.8 becomes not as much of a necessity anymore these days. Yes, they are incredibly fun. It is great to shoot with a really fast lens and do that super shallow bokeh and all of that look. But definitely look at your style of photography and videography. A 70-200 F4 can be incredibly useful for portraits, especially when you start working with stuff where you just back up further and use compression to your advantage with an F4. You can get some stunning images out of it. And actually, it's one of the things that I'm going to be bringing up and actually asking Brandon next week about. Because we are talking about portrait photography, and we're going to cover a lot of the lens options that he has, what he prefers to shoot with, and kind of, go through those details. Let's see here. Les has a follow-up, a question to a follow-up of his comment before. It says, I'm looking to pair a first-party zoom with my 70-200 F4 for his S5. Is there a significant difference in image quality between the 24-70 and the 24-105? Yes and no. I would say if you're looking for pure image quality, the 24-70 would be, in my opinion, the better lens to go with. Answered, yeah, it's close, but I'll actually go direct into those two lenses. The 24-70, I'd say if you're looking and you want to make an investment into a lens that you're going to have a ton of legroom with, the 24-70 can and is the better, I'd say, investment way to go. And that's usually how I look at lenses. Lenses are investments. Camera bodies are always going to be upgraded over the years. Lenses are a constant. Lenses will continue to keep going through the system. So from a pure image quality perspective, the 24-70, I think, is the better lens to move up with. Mainly because if you look at some of the features that you have on your 70-200 as it is right now, the 70-200, for those that don't know, has a clutch-actuated manual focus system, so you have the ability to have measured focus marks just by pulling the front collar back. It's also an S Pro lens, which means it's a collaborative design between Panasonic and Leica for the optic design and development. So that means that it is certified by Leica. My version is a very early version of it, so it doesn't say certified by Leica on it, but I think my 24-70 does. Yes, my 24-70 does. So you'll actually get that printed on the barrel of the lens. So with the 24-70, you see, you have that clutch. You have the S Pro series build. It is a certified by Leica lens, so you're getting a lens that is in our top tier. Not to say that the 24-105 is a bad lens by any stretch of the imagination. I think if If budget allows it, the 24 to 70 is the better option to go. If budget's a little tight and you want to be a little more careful with the spend that you want to make, the 24 to 105 is still going to be an incredibly solid lens for you. Specifically on the S5 too. The S5, the 24 to 105, it's a solid combo. You've got that high ISO performance like we talked about. So you really should be good one way or another. But if it's me, personally, I'm going 24 to 70. Yeah. Let's see here. Albert, the F4 is constant. I'm not sure exactly what you were referencing there for. But yeah, the 24 to 105, it's an F4 constant. The 70 to 200 is an F4 constant. The only variable aperture lens in the Lumix S series right now is the 20 to 60. The 20 to 60 millimeter is a, as my brain just kind of stopped there for a second, is a 3.5 to 5.6, but it is a 20 millimeter wide angle lens. So if you're someone who's looking at wanting to use the system as a landscape photographer, but don't know if you want to jump into, say, a 16 to 35 or a 14 to 24 yet because of the cost, the 20 to 60 will be a solid lens for that. Let's see. For nature photography, is there a L-mount lens usable on the S5? Well, there's tons of lenses available for the S5. Depends on what you define as nature photography. For landscape I always keep defaulting to landscape photographers, but for wildlife and nature style photography of what I understand it to be, we've got a 70 to 200 2.8 f4 with a 2x converter, so you can get your 140 to 400. What is that, f4? I think that drops down to. I think my brain just stopped again. But there is a teleconverter here. There are also long super telephoto lenses available from Sigma in the L mount as well. So you've got a bunch of options in the system for it. It just depends on what your style and what you define as nature photography. Let's see here. Albert asks, is 14 millimeter currently the widest lens? I believe 14 millimeter is the current widest in L-mount native lenses. 14 millimeter would be from Sigma. I don't know. I'm fairly certain there's nothing wider yet. But that's the beauty of the system. If you need something ultra wide or fisheye in the L-mount system, there is the EF adapting capabilities. So there are definitely wider lenses that can mount on this system. That is why we have the mount design that we have. You can pretty much get any lens to really attach to this camera. Let's see here. We got time for another couple of questions, but actually the first, I'm going to jump back and actually make another pitch here for y'all. So just remember, we will actually be going live again Friday, 11/6 at 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time for another special edition of the Lumix Live platform. So it's going to be both on the Photoplus platform and on YouTube. So make sure if you're on YouTube, get the bell icon on, subscribe, like the video, all that kind of fun stuff that we're always hounding you guys about. Make sure to get in on that stuff because you guys won't want to miss Friday's session. Follow up, next week we will start the actual, kind of more direct conversations with the rest of my team here. So we've got Brandon Cortez next week where we're going to be talking about portrait photography and not just about cameras. So we'll be going over lights, lens options, obviously the camera options that he's using, and then basically just picking his brain. So make sure to bring questions that you guys have about portrait photography. Brandon is a wealth of knowledge with this, and we'll also be covering some of his images, talking about how he created them. And Brandon's got a really cool look to a lot of his work. Followed up with that, we're going to be having a conversation with Michael Richardson on the 17th from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, or 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I have to remember that I'm down in Texas, so I'm Central Time. We're going to be talking with Michael Richardson about sports photography. Michael has a very awesome history in sports photography, so you are not going to want to miss some of his images and some of the advice he can give about how to get into it and some of the settings that he uses. We'll probably be talking a lot about with some of the Micro Four Thirds cameras there, and of course we'll jump in with some of the S series as well. And then we're going to round out the month with Jack Salamanchuk, and we're going to be talking about macro photography. So Albert, you're definitely going to want to check that one out. We're going to be talking with Jack about macro photography. We're going to cover some light painting and some live composite with the Lumix S5 or even the G95. So there's a whole lot coming throughout the rest of this month. Make sure you guys are getting subscribed. Make sure you're following us on all the different platforms that we are broadcasting and presenting on. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see, what other questions we have here? Video people, can you adapt L-mount to Micro Four Thirds cameras? Unfortunately, no. I don't believe it is possible to mount them currently, but never say never. Let's see, do we have any other questions over on the Photoplus platform? I know this session is a little bit more of a rambling session compared to some of the previous ones and some of the upcoming ones we have, but wanted to get everyone kind of comfortable into this platform so you guys see what we're all about. Again, as a reminder, for those of you that are joining us over on the YouTube interface, make sure to head over to Photoplus. At the top of the chat, Jack dropped a link to the Photoplus booth. You do have to be registered, but registration, I believe, is still free. So make sure to go over, get yourself registered, get on the platform. There are so many awesome conversations, awesome presentations going on throughout the period of Photoplus Plus. You're definitely not going to want to miss it, and obviously, with the way everything's going now, it is great because it's mobile. We can be pretty much anywhere you want to be and be able to actually keep up with everything going on, be able to watch these mobily. I know a lot of us have been living on these things. Let's see here, what time we got here, because I know I've got a hard cutoff at 3:30 my time. So let's take one last question. Well, actually, we'll comment on last two things before we call it out here. G95 light painting feature on the G9. I don't have any info on that, but we've put the request into our teams to get the live composite mode into other cameras. And then Pioneer Media, for video, how would you compare the S1H in Super 35 versus the S5's APS-C mode? Pretty much the same. The only difference is the S1H has a low-pass filter, where the S5 does not. So footage will be sharper on the S5 versus the S1H, which in some filming cases might not be of a good benefit. In other cases, it may actually be a really good benefit. The only reason they're labeled differently is the S1H is more of a pro cinema style camera, and Super 35 is the traditional terminology for what we consider APS-C. APS-C is just more what photographers and I want to say videographers are used to calling it. That's kind of a blanket statement on videographers. It's not meant as a slight. It's just in our side of the industry, APS-C is more common. But yeah, as far as between an S1H and Super 35 and an S5 and APS-C, just know that the S5 is going to be a little bit sharper because of the no low-pass filter. And then Albert, does anyone make water enclosures for the S series? Yes, actually, a number of manufacturers make underwater housings for the S series. Nauticam, Icolite, I think CNC. Definitely check a lot of their websites out. They'll have the most info on what is compatible and what is available for their systems. All right. Well, we're coming up to the end of this, and we are actually closing this off right on time because we are, like I said, we're broadcasting in the Photoplus platform as well. So before we go, I want to make sure to also take this moment to call out to everybody. Today is November 3rd. Make sure you are going out and getting your votes counted. It's an important time of year. Make sure to go out and vote. This is your reminder. You can take these platforms with you while you're waiting in line. Aside from that, and of course that's for if you're here in the U.S., aside from that, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Again, we're going to be live on Friday at 2 p.m. Central Time, or 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to join us for a special edition of the Lumix Live, where we're going to be talking about lenses and some other equipment like that. And we will see you all in on that session. And again, guys on YouTube, get over to the Photoplus platform. Get yourself registered. It's free. Come chat with us over there. Otherwise, I will see everybody on Friday. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.